So, by the request of one of my community members, today I took a look at Airship Assault. And while a lot of my videos where I talk about games, especially on Roblox, tend to be very polarizing, I usually either think that it's really, really, really good or a total piece of borderline shovelware garbage. This time around, I just don't have too heavy opinions one way or the other. And that mostly stems from the fact that this game is just kind of alright. And that sucks because I think it actually has the potential of being a really, really fun game with a lot of longevity. But unfortunately, because of some issues that I'm going to be bringing up in this video, I think it's severely held back. And it makes me scratch my head even more because a lot of the problems that I think the game has, it already had a blueprint of solving from the game that it's, well, let's just be honest here, basically ripping off. So that's the elephant in the room. The first thing that we have to talk about is the fact that Airship Assault is just a blatant copy of Zeppelin Wars, which, as far as I understand, is a blatant copy of a different game, which was identical to Zeppelin Wars. And that's also the area where I have to let you guys know my bias right off the bat. I really, really enjoyed Zeppelin Wars. I think that it's a super fun, albeit very simple game. Basically, the context behind both of these games is that two teams both spawn on a Zeppelin. You can get in planes to fly back and forth between the Zeppelins, and the goal is to take down the enemy's airship. You can do that by destroying the internal components of said airship in order to destroy the thing in its entirety. Now the thing is, despite Airship Assault having more players and being a much more modern take on the idea of Zeppelin Wars, like I said, there's some things in here that just make me sort of scratch my head. The first is the way that destruction is handled because, oh man, is this a letdown. Seriously, I don't know how this didn't make it into Airship Assault when it was such an integral part of Zeppelin Wars. Basically what I'm getting at is when you place bombs or fire rockets, what have you, on an enemy airship in Zeppelin Wars, when it goes off, it will destroy the surrounding area. This means that if you're trying to either give yourself an extra sight line or just make another way into the enemy airship, you can destroy different parts of it in order to get in there. This can be a double-edged sword sometimes because if you're trying to blow up a component but you accidentally destroy a wall that then reveals yourself to more angles, that could be a real problem. It's just such an interesting part of gameplay, and it also plays into the actual destruction of the enemy airship itself. Because in the original Zeppelin Wars, you could destroy the airship by destroying the internal components which would take it down, or just reducing the structural integrity of the airship enough to the point where it can't sustain itself. This done, obviously, by just destroying enough of the airship itself. This, as far as I could tell, just isn't the case whatsoever in Airship Assault, and it makes some of the aspects of Airship Assault feel really, really flat. The most notable for that is definitely the side cannons on your airship. In Zeppelin Wars, the side cannons mean a hell of a lot, especially having a good crew on enough of the cannons to keep the enemy in their ship pinned down, as well as slowly chipping away at the airship's integrity. It helps when you consider the fact that you can destroy the walls covering the critical parts of the enemy airship and then destroy them directly from yours. Now, this quickly falls apart when you can't destroy any of the walls. So you're just sort of blindly firing at the enemy airship and it has absolutely no impact and looks like you're just not doing anything. Sure, you can destroy their turrets and maybe you can kill some of their guys, but that's about all you can do from the looks of it. And again, it's one of those things where it's like, well, this game that you took this entire concept from did this so good, how did you guys screw this up? Now, the other thing that feels like it should have been a no-brainer, but I guess it wasn't when it comes to Airship Assault versus Zeppelin Wars, is the plane controls. Good God, what were they thinking? Seriously. Why did the plane controls take such a nosedive in this game? I don't know if they were just trying to make the planes have less of an impact on the match, so they made them significantly harder to control in order to facilitate that, but at the end of the day, in Zeppelin Wars, the plane controls are extremely simple. You press the go button, and then you click the mouse in order to turn the plane. It's pretty much as simple as it gets, but it's also incredibly intuitive, easy to use, and feels good to play with. In Airship Assault, on the other hand, you control all of the plane controls with WASD. No mouse involved. Trying to make minute adjustments here is a pain in the ass. I basically feel like I just straight up don't have control of my plane. It's just not at all fun, and I found myself avoiding the planes pretty much at all costs because, well, they're just not at all fun to use, and I log on to games to have fun. And once again, it's one of those things where it ain't broke, don't fix it. I just don't understand why they felt the need to take a system that worked perfectly fine and change it into something that's just so much worse. Now, the strangest issue with Airship Assault, which is something that's not necessarily exclusive to this game, but it's one of those things that when I see it, I'm just like, did any of these guys ever play a first-person shooter before making a first-person shooter? And that's the aiming sensitivity. Good God, what the fuck, guys? So this is one of those things that's hard to explain in words without you actually having played it. But for whatever reason, the game developers decided that they wanted to change the default Roblox sensitivity and add their own sensitivity slider to the game. Hey, guys, just so you're acutely aware, there is already a sensitivity option in Roblox. You did not need to add a sensitivity slider and fuck with my sensitivity so that way I need to mess with it. I have mine set for Roblox. You don't need to change it. I don't know how people don't get this. I don't know how so many games decide to mess with your sensitivity and add a slider when Roblox already has one. But anyways, the problem really comes in when you go into first person and you decide to ADS, because the ADS sensitivity slows down to a friggin' crawl. It is so slow. Newsflash, game developer guys, and I'm gonna tell you this as someone who's played tons and tons and tons of first-person shooters and considers themselves pretty good at them. Don't slow down my sensitivity when I zoom in on a 1x scope, ever. And if you're going to do that, at least put in a setting to make it so I can turn it off. You start putting in zoom sensitivity coefficients when you actually have guns that zoom in a reasonable degree. These guns don't do that. And so it just makes it so when you zoom in, your aim slows down to a crawl, and I look like an idiot and that I can't hit the broadside of the barn, despite the fact that I can go into Battlefield and drop like 50 kills in 20 minutes. It just breaks my brain how something this simple, that's such an integral part of first-person shooters, gets glossed over just for the sake of putting a slider in there, I guess? I don't know. I don't think I'm going crazy here. If any veteran FPS players decide to give this game a shot, please let me know I'm not going nuts, because this was just whack. I ended up having to increase my sensitivity so that way it was too high while I was walking around and doing hipfire. That way when I aimed down my sights, my sensitivity was actually decent and I could aim. That's ridiculous. Come on. Now, while we're on the topic of aiming and shooting enemies, we gotta talk about the default loadouts, or more specifically, the age-old Roblox problem of, hey, you're new to this game? Fuck you. This is more of a free-to-play-ism than it is a Roblox-ism, and on Roblox, I'm not entirely sure that this works the way the game developers intend it to, but I'm not entirely sure. Generally speaking, because these games are free-to-play, they're also pay-to-win, so they make the grinds for a lot of unlocks on the weapons significantly longer than they probably should be in order to encourage you to pay for the blatantly better weapons that you get. The thing that's weird here is that while the first weapon in the game that you get is abysmal, and so is the first pistol that you get, the second weapon that you get, the SMG, is perfectly serviceable, and I found myself pretty easily being able to put up a fight against people who clearly had better weapons than me just because that second gun is so much better than the first one. So let's talk about the first one, because, well, I'm not entirely sure what they were thinking with this. The first weapon in the game that you get for both of the classes, the pilot and the crew member that you'll be reasonably using to fight other players, is the bolt-action rifle. It has no scope on it, and obviously, as a bolt-action rifle, it can be easier said than done to take out opponents because, for some reason, it's a 2-shot kill at close to medium range, and a 2-shot headshot at close to medium range. Wait, what? You gave starting players a bolt-action rifle without a scope, and it can't one-shot headshot. Are you out of your fucking mind? What was the design decision here? Seriously, I wanna know. How did you think that this was a good idea? It's not even as if the player can snipe people on other ships from far away with it, because not only do you not have a scope, but there's also significant travel time on the weapon. Guns in Airship Assault shoot projectiles, which means you need to lead your targets, and the projectiles move pretty slow. And on top of all of that, There's a damage fall off for this gun. Wait, what? So you're telling me if someone's far enough away, I need to hit them 3 times with the bolt action? What the fuck? It's like they were just trying to make the worst possible weapon they could think of, and this is what they came up with. And honestly, if that was the goal, congratulations, you did it. But the reason this is such a head scratcher is because, well, if you want to hook players on your game, maybe giving them an abysmal, borderline unusable weapon from the start and putting them up against people who have significantly better weapons isn't such a great idea. See, I mentioned earlier that I'm a first-person shooter veteran. I've played them for years and years and years. I'm good at those games. And when I was stuck on the bolt-action rifle, because I'm still pretty good at shooters, I was able to do pretty well for myself. But the stark contrast to that is as soon as I unlocked the submachine gun when I got to, I think, level 5, well, top of the board, top of the board. Like, if this isn't as telling as it gets, I don't know what else to say. You need to be giving the new players of your games something that's easy to use but not as effective. It's the reason why things like the M5A3 in Battlefield 2042, the very first assault rifle you get in the game, still holds up all the way into the endgame when you've unlocked all the weapons. It's not the best gun in the game, but it's pretty damn near close because it's incredibly easy to use and consistent, and that's why they give it to you at the start. But by giving every single new player a shitty bolt action right off the start, you basically tell all of these already bad players, hey, be cannon fodder for all of the people who have played the game enough to unlock different weapons. And if you get tired of being cannon fodder and getting obliterated with your just objectively worse by 1,000 miles weapon, then maybe you can pay us some money. It feels insidious, and it just sort of screams, we want you to pay money for other guns or eat shit. And really, there's like 1,000 ways that they could go about fixing this. I think the easiest 2 solutions that I would do is give everyone a submachine gun right off the bat and buff the default rifle so that way there's actually a reason to pick it. Giving everyone a submachine gun is pretty self-explanatory. If you have a full auto weapon, it's significantly easier to use, and if it's the worst one available, then it still encourages people to engage in the progression or potentially shell out some money if they want to skip the grind, while also giving them a chance instead of just relegating them to cannon fodder. And on top of that, obviously, buffing the default rifle so that way, number 1, it can one-shot headshot at close to medium range, and number 2, that it doesn't have damage fall off, at the very least making it so it 3-shot kills. I understand making it not one-shot headshot further away, but I don't think this gun should ever 3-shot kill. That's just asinine. And I know that I'm gonna get some flack by this point in the video because I've just been trashing on the game, and you're probably like, Eclipse hates this game, he thinks it's a piece of shit. And no, that's just not true. So if you're going to leave that comment right now, or you already have, well, you're just wrong. I did have fun with the game, and like I said at the beginning, I think it has potential to be a really solid game. And that's why I'm being so harsh with my criticisms here, because it feels like it's being directly held back by all of this stuff. And I want it to get fixed, so that way it's not held back by this stuff. And there were plenty of things in here that I really liked, that I thought actually ended up being significantly better than Zeppelin Wars. I think the best introduction by a mile is the glider. This thing is awesome, and God, I wish that this was something that I had back when I was still playing Zeppelin Wars. The Raider class is effectively a hybrid of the pilot class from Zeppelin Wars. In Zeppelin Wars, there were only 2 classes you could pick, pilot and crew member. The pilot could fly planes and invade the enemy's airship, and the crew member would defend your own airship and repair it. In Airship Assault, now we have 3 classes, the introduction of the Raider, the crew member, which does the same thing as Zeppelin Wars, and the pilot, which is directly relegated to flying planes, which, as I mentioned, is just sort of miserable. But regardless, in Zeppelin Wars, if you wanted to get on the enemy airship, you either had to slowly parachute from your airship, assuming you had the height to do so, and hope you didn't get shot, or fly over there in a plane, which you needed to use points to get, and so if you didn't have any points, you just couldn't do it. This is fixed in Airship Assault with the introduction of the glider for the Raider class. It's basically a wingsuit that you can use to glide to the enemy's ship. Because you can get on top of your airship, you can cover a significant distance with this thing and very easily get to the enemy airship, making matches a lot more tense with a lot more invaders. My only real nitpick with the glider is that for whatever reason, it's a one-time use item. I don't really know why it's a one-time use item. Maybe people were trying to cheese by like spamming the glider or something, but I feel like that's one of those things that you could fix with a cooldown rather than just removing the glider from your inventory. The same thing goes with the sort of ammo situation, both when it comes to your explosives, gliders, and planes for that matter. In Zeppelin Wars, all of your ammo is finite, but there were ammo crates around the ship that you could use to regenerate your ammo. In Airship Assault, however, you have unlimited ammo in your general weapons that you use to fight other players, which I actually think is a good change. But what you don't have unlimited ammo on are your explosives. And once again, this is a thing that I understand why you don't have unlimited ammo necessarily, but it's also once again a thing that I think a cooldown would really benefit from. Things like grenades and the dynamite you use to destroy the enemy ship, I think would really benefit from having unlimited ammo, but on a significant cooldown. The main problem that I've run into is the fact that after you've done some damage to the enemy airship, you're basically just sort of standing around there killing enemies over and over again with no real point, and it's honestly better to just respawn and come back with more explosives, and that doesn't feel very good. And I talked about planes a little bit earlier, but the same sort of ammo situation is present here as well. I assume that the way that you get ammo back on your planes is to land on your airship and refuel it, maybe? It's not super clear, but I just don't understand why they didn't make it so you'd simply reload the bombs and your guns by, well, waiting. I think it's sort of arbitrary to put all of these restrictions on how to get more ammo when most people are just never going to interact with the system, and so when they run out of ammo, well, they're just out, and that sucks. At the end of the day, I just want to see Airship Assault improve. I know there's probably going to be people that are going to come to the video and be like, Eclipse, how can you be supportive of this game if it's basically just directly ripping off and copy-pasting someone else's game, and haven't you said that that's a bad thing? And yes, that is a bad thing. But the difference here is that Zeppelin Wars at this point is effectively abandonware. There's almost nobody playing it, it hasn't gotten a real update in over a year, and even during the point where it was active, the content updates were extremely sparse. It was basically just being kept on life support, and it being replaced by people who care a lot more, I think will end up being better as a whole. If you want to choose to believe that that makes me a hypocrite, then feel free, I can't stop you. If Zeppelin Wars was still being actively updated and cared for by the people behind it, then this would be a different story, but it's just not. With all that said though, I think I'm pretty much wrapping up here. If you want to check out Airship Assault for yourself, I'll be linking in the description. Hopefully the people behind it can take something away from this video. But with that, I am wrapping up here. So if you enjoyed the video, you can leave a like and subscribe. If you didn't, don't. And with all that being said, have a wonderful day now wherever you are, and I'll see you guys next time.